This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London. All of our podcasts are available from our website, www.sas.ac.uk.
We started off from 3 different 20th century texts, and which obviously raised a whole range of issues, and quite different ones. There is some, starting from Motherhood, obviously, and looking in some cases at a rather rosy picture, perhaps, of the maternal bond, and whether that, in some cases, you do wonder. Sounds interesting. We should do it. No, really. So I was only going to open it. So I did wonder whether, with the first text, there was a rather rosy picture of the mother-daughter bond, and perhaps even some essentialism coming out of it. Certainly, in the second text, with its slippery first-person narrator and irony, did destabilise any rosy picture of motherhood. And I don't know how to open the debate, but some of the questions that come out of the reports is that we're working with literary texts which are essentially constructed through language and through figurative language, namely metaphor came out, and symbolism, slippery narrators, perhaps, first-person narrative. So I think that's perhaps to open up the debate. Can we deal with questions of motherhood through literary texts? And I don't know if you want to ask any questions to the panel.
Can I just respond? I didn't think it was a rosy picture of mother-daughter bond. I didn't convey it in that way. What I thought she was trying to do was to reflect on some of the difficulties of being a mother, which certainly seemed familiar to me from experience. What knowledge of the world do you convey to your children to enable them to survive in what's a very unpredictable world? And I think she sets up that by making a contrast between images of war and images of the kitchen in a very vivid way. So I think she's problematizing being a mother in a particular way.
Just following on from that, because in the poem where she talks about making a creme brulee, and she also says it's disordering your life, entrenching even in a discontinuous line of lies. So the way I read that was that she's not actually saying that men do the killing and women do the cooking. No, that's a lie.
Yes, but everything is much more complicated. And there's a real danger that a mother can impose ideas on her children that are unhelpful.
And that the image of the contrast between the domesticity and the beautiful, the perfect, happens again in Martinaitis, that the lie, the prison, so it's those two worlds. So it's all this beautiful domestic
I was wondering about that quote, but that makes sense, the juxtaposition of the kitchen.
It's interesting that both of them use that, the kitchen, the domestic sphere, and then they go out into either the war or the prison.
There was another mention of prison.
I think if you put it on the table in the middle,
Yes.
I thought the prison thing in your text sounded interesting, because there was a bit of a prison issue around, because she talked about how motherhood forced you to become a prisoner of life, that it was a kind of ontological oppression because she felt like she had to stay alive, and that the choice to kill herself or to not live was taken away from her. And so prison, rather than in your, or what you were saying about the kind of age-old, sort of synonymous prison, domestic, prison, kitchen. In this text was a bit more primitive, like life became the prison because motherhood made you not be able to have the choice of killing yourself. So I thought the prison chilly. But I thought it was interesting the way the prison was used on an ontological level, not on a relation to social domesticity as it's more commonly is.
It's interesting actually they all dealt with death as well as birth and death. There's sort of line from like about birth and death on all sorts of this very much so.
Do you think, I don't know, I mean, as I said, I'm a literature person, but is there a danger sometimes in kind of over reading too much into trying to find symbolism everywhere? I mean, what was quite interesting in our group is that actually, because we were reading the text out loud, and to save time, Maria Jose, so we have the mother, she's come downstairs, she's made a cup of coffee, she sits down and she gets out her research. And then there is this passage which is all about this guy who's in prison. Maria Jose actually said just before we got to that passage, skip this bit, we don't need it, we'll go past this extract which is all about the prison, and then to where the daughter comes down. And then actually Elena said, I was really surprised that you said that we should miss that out because reading this as a standalone extract, I think you said that you read it as a short story, and actually that became, one of the central pieces, was the contrast between the prison scene, which is the subject of her research, and then the kind of domestic scene where she is with her daughter drinking her coffee. And I thought that was quite interesting that, in fact, you didn't seem to have picked that up as one of the most interesting points about the extract. And so I just wondered, you hadn't seemed to have picked it up as being particularly symbolic. And
the thing I wanted to do with that text was it's so perfect, yeah? The domesticity is bliss, isn't it? This kind of world is a happy end. This a kind of everything is fantastic. The coffee is great.
You were saying how your students really hated it.
So I wanted that kind of, isn't it fantastic to be a mother? I have a perfect kitchen made by the perfect man. And that's what I wanted everybody to go, what? So that's why if you took that, you saw the whole, the beautiful thing. And then that was too,
But when I first read it, and I read it and obviously not knowing anything about the author, for me what came through was how the woman has to negotiate. On the one hand, yes, you have this, but then the child arrives, and there is this interruption of this in a way. I mean, she brings in some break. I mean, and the fact also that the mother cannot really interpret what this, where, it is. I mean, I thought that was very interesting because suddenly, she looks at this girl and this girl brings some sort of, interruption to her world. So again, how the woman has to negotiate different spheres, and inhabit different worlds at the same time. To me, rather than stressing this domestic bliss, for me it was really this dialogue of this little girl. The mother is trying to be really organized, and she's up, and she, everyone is asleep, so she can get on with her work, and then this little one comes down and meets, and you cannot just dismiss her. She tries to, the cat, and no, she doesn't want the cat. And there was, I didn't know anything about it. I think what is very interesting, having heard what you just said about this, is that I did think that there was something to do with loss, because to me the ending, I didn't know that someone had died, I was very much wondering, so I think that is very sort of this sense of, obviously, who was dealing with, yes, an absence or something that was very interesting.
And the interesting thing is that she has to answer that question. She has no idea what the daughter wants, but she has to answer because she's a mother, because that's what, and that's the difficulty, isn't it? How do you answer? You cannot always answer as a mother. And not being able to relate to that, not being the good enough mother, not being able to answer your child question. And it is quite disturbing, I find, that not really knowing what the child is.
with exactly the sense.
Somebody said, after we talk about it, and about me saying that the grandmother had died, so the narrator's mother, somebody said that I thought was asking about where the grandmother is. And probably the narrator is asking herself, where is my mother? But I don't know if it's that or not. I think it's quite good that you don't know exactly.
And the fact is that the answer which she gives, which is beyond, is meaningless, but the child is satisfied with it. Why? Because she's picked her up and she talks about their two faces being next to one another. So in a way, it's kind of, I think it is calming that anxiety of what do you tell your children, and that we heard from the poem, because it's saying, you know, anything. As long as the child is in your arms, you're looking out of the window together and you're saying something that sounds sort of okay, it doesn't really matter what the child meant, it doesn't really matter what you mean in the reply. The problem is solved that way.
But I don't know, it's solved because it's very open. I think that and it's really, really open. Even though it's an epilogue that seems to be closing something, I think it leaves it really open.
Something that
I just wanted to say something about the, which I think comes out of all these discussions, about the way literature deals with motherhood, because that's something that we specifically talked about as well. And it seems to me that there are several things that came out of all of our discussions. First of all, it's the personal view, which you wouldn't get in a scientific essay, I suppose. And that personal, if you compare just the Vanderbeker and the Olmi, it can be completely different standpoints. So that's really, opens up a really wide field for literature. Then there's the ability to draw in the reader, by addressing the reader directly, which I think works really well through literature. And it also works really well in the sense that you can be annoyed, you can be wanting to shout at this, but you certainly have to think about it, and you have to be more active maybe than in many literary texts. I think you are asked to be more active. I think more active also in constructing the meaning. The multiplicity of meaning came out of all of your discussions, doesn't it? So I think these are 3 points. There are probably lots more, but 3 points that seem to have come out of all our discussions of where literature can do something.
Can I comment on that? Because from our group, when we were talking about, remember the first person narration thing, but with the good enough text, she does subvert that by the counter-narrative humour and distancing. But it's almost like you could say that in that literary piece, it's a strategic use of the personal pronoun, of the I. So it's like Irigabay's strategic mimicry or essentialism, that she's sort of setting up this kind of particular first-person narrative in order to critique it subtly. But you could easily get it could be missed, and our discomfort with the text was the possibility of that being missed. And once we knew that it was, we read it as being a kind of strategic use of the personal pronoun and the first-person narrative, it became much more interesting. And I personally sort of saw the point of it more. So it wasn't a kind of indulgent drawing you in personal, in a kind of claustrophobic, private experience, fetishizing the so-called private experience. It was strategically setting that up in order to show its impossibility and also what it was politically linked to. So in a way, that's where women's writing, if we're going to talk about such a general term, in a kind of post-Irigabayan climate, would be doing with the first-person narrator. Otherwise, what are we doing with it? We don't want to collaborate with that so-called private experience tradition. So that's why I think that this was full of point, to see what you can do structurally with narrative device in order to politically undermine certain ways of writing that get associated with things which we quite like to move on from.
I think it links in here to me. I just wonder, just going back to your text about the wonderful partner who's had this wonderful idea about her having her office near the kitchen so she doesn't get any yogurt when she's doing her work. But actually, when we look at the text, what does it tell us? It tells us that the bedrooms in Cecilia's playroom are upstairs. So Cecilia has a bedroom all to herself upstairs. Is she going to play upstairs on her own? No, she's going to come downstairs, where Mum has just been given a very small space to work. And it's very interesting that she says, I never imagined that you could get so much out of it apart from the kitchen. So, you know, from the kitchen, she's been given a space for work. Isn't that wonderful? So I think, you know, she's kind of, you know, deceiving us here. This is not this glorious picture at all, in fact, because why wasn't she given the study upstairs? And then she can play downstairs, and then he can look out and watch. I'm going upstairs for now to read. No. You know.
I saw that. It's like a little bit table somewhere. She's got her stuff on.
Yeah, and it's very interesting because he is an architect, the perfect husband. And they actually have moved his table that he used to have in the living room. It's moved to another studio, so he's not going to be working in the house anymore. He's working somewhere. So it's even worse.
It's kind of implicit dialogue with the room of one's own, I think.
Yes. We were talking about that actually, and how I think there was another Virginia Woolf reference. I can't remember. It's written there somewhere.
To the
lighthouse.
Adalgisa said something.
It was Adalgisa, wasn't it? It wasn't just the room of one's own, it was to the lighthouse. And
I talked about the image in the end of the circle, which reminded me of Lily Briscoe's last brush on the painting at the end of the lighthouse, which brings everything together. And so I thought this circular gesture of the child was creating some kind of continuity and wholeness. And somebody else sounded the possibility that the grandmother was being drawn in there as creating a link between the child, his mother, and the dead grandmother. And maybe that where was linked to the girl asking, where is maybe she, or the text was searching for the grandmother. I think this is what we said. Just a suggestion. It would have to be, looked at within the context of the whole novel.
It's
to see whether it works.
It is very difficult, isn't it, to read, because the poem is different. The poem is a beginning and end, but with the text, either the beginning or the end, it's very difficult to be able to read.
But it's interesting, certainly in 2 out of the 3 texts, there seems to be an engagement with female genealogy at a literary level through Emily Dickinson, and you mentioning Virginia Woolf, which actually contradicts the question you were raising about, or through which we may think of the question you were raising, that women's texts are often read as semi-fictional, semi-autobiographical, and is that appropriate if there is this level of conscious engagement with previous foremothers? So I'm not sure how much there is in the German text, though you thought that there was at least an unconscious engagement with
No, but there's an overt reference to Winnicott, isn't there? There is a reference. I think it's explicit to but other people thought maybe it wasn't explicit. But I don't know about literary foremothers, but certainly references, and certainly disrupting a notion of reading it as autobiography, collapsing the author into the character was foreclosed, luckily, by the counter-split narrative. So I don't think that the good enough text did do that. I mean, it stops you reading it as semi-autobiographical. I would hope, anyway.
I think it's a more generalised problem rather than something peculiar to women's writing, to conflate autobiography with fiction. I think male writers, to be fair, are victims of that too. And I think
it depends where you're reading and writing. In most English departments now, I don't think that's a practice that happens at all. It's completely something which would be, well,
in our group, I think, because I was asking, because I don't know how students are encouraged to approach literary texts, and it was very much that's a kind of you know, your first year undergraduate will go away and read everything about the author and then write a book. That maybe is not where I come from anyway.
No, they're not supposed to do it, we say.
That's what they do, and so that's the battle, is to stop people doing that, and you try and get people to move away. And then as you go through, you actually learn not to do that.
In the world, cyclists should do novels in that way. And a similar autobiography with the reviews and the
but writers maybe try and subvert that or trick the reader into, you know, that's...
Well, sometimes they're autobiographical.
Whatever that... Yeah.
I think that's the example that we often use to try to get our students off that particular track, is to say that, yes, everything is in a way, because after all, Flaubert said, Madame Bovary said what? Yes. And, you know, in a way, all writers are writing about themselves and their own experience. So, okay, never mind that, what else is there to say about it? And it's just to make simplistic parallels that we're trying to stop our students doing.
Can I ask one more question about the German text? It's a very straightforward question, in fact. I'm Amber and your group, the group, whole group. Well, I would agree that that there is a play with the first-person narrative that is laden with meanings in the text itself. But have you discussed the theme of motherhood as vogue?
Yes, that's the thing I picked as well.
Because I think it's quite important, and if you have discussed that, so do you think that
the fashion thing?
Fashion,
we did. Yeah, we talked about
and
that.
then courage, well, to go against the fashion.
Well,
to get pregnant. So did you understand it as a part of that mocking tone, or as a serious tone, or
we saw it as, we talked about her talking about that as a mocking, satirical comment on the construction of subjectivity and the maternal, the 1 minute in fashion, 1 minute it's not. It's sort of subversive, anti-essential. That's how we read it, didn't we? Completely. As talking about it as a fad, 1 minute it's in, 1 minute it's out. She's making a critique of sort of neoliberal capitalism in relation to choice and fashion, motherhood and subjectivity being subsumed within that.
I see.
So that's how we understood that, just in the strain of the text that was social criticism in relation to constructions of the material.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I just ask a different sort of question? We just touched on it, I think, in the poetry one. I was just wondering about the reception. You have to ask the people sitting here rather than there, but what the reception of these texts have been in critical context, and how they have been received. We talked about Rachel Cuss this morning and the sort of violent reaction to her text, and just wondered how they're doing in different cultures. Do you want to Claire, maybe, about?
Well, we talked about how some critics have reacted to Annalise Amaral's descriptions of making creme brulee and describing breaking bowls in the kitchen as being quite appropriate, really, for a woman writer. And she writes about cooking and she writes about these kinds of things. And she has said that why shouldn't she write about these kinds of things? Maybe when she writes about her daughter in poetry, it's the autobiographical thing again. It's a daughter, not necessarily her daughter. And the kitchen is, why shouldn't the kitchen be somewhere that philosophical discussions can be had?
Yeah, I haven't actually engaged extensively with the reception of Emily in Germany in the media, but I believe she's a minor writer. She hasn't received a great deal of attention. And she hasn't been discussed actually in academic circles. There are two articles on English-speaking German studies, other than my own work on Benedict. So seem to appear. So yeah, I think she's been meaning to minor really between German studies and the German itself, which I think is wrong. I think it's because her books are they're slim, the novellas, and apparently trivial, they don't address weighty subjects considered mothering as well. But I hope that will change.
And Carmen Martinelli, Lo Raro es Vivir is one of those, the like reading is a strange thing. It's one hardly had any critical studies, so it was one of her latest novels, and she's been studied. The 1970s novels have been studied quite a lot, and then there is a novel called Nubosidad Variable, which is variable clouds. Yes, thank you. Which has been studied quite a lot, and she has been studied from all different kinds of perspectives.
How does that
feminism and anti-feminism, but not that particular case.
You were saying that that's a slightly more conservative text than some of the others.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. You have to tell me when you Yeah.
Well, can I just return to Annalise Manuel? She is a very respected poet now because she has continued to publish, and she doesn't only write about the kitchen. Although when she first started, that was something that critics did focus on. So because she makes reference to, she has lots of intertextual references and has written poems that are long and complicated, so she can be considered a good poet on other terms as well as just the domestic.
Yeah, and I must say about the semi-autobiographical or autobiographical, lots of her first novels have been studied as semi-autobiographical novels, like El Cuarto de Atrás, the Back Room, or Very Serious, has been studied again and again as semi-autobiographical texts. So, in a way, it was my fault that I kind of put the author a lot into the discussion.
It was interesting that we did, you know,
You asked
it was
me lots of
interesting
questions.
that a lot of the questions to try and get to probe the text we immediately wanted to know about, and that was interesting.
I just find it difficult to understand. This came up in the poetry section. I find it difficult to understand that any European country would find that issue of domestic subject matter being an issue at this stage of the game. I mean, it's so long since, it is the early 1970s that this all got, I thought, clarified, you know. I'm coming from a very conservative position myself. Like from about 1980, that was no longer an issue. I take your word for it, but like, how many European countries do you think there are where it would still be, in the late 20th century, early 21st century, would there still be discussion of, oh my God, women writing about kitchens?
I think what we're getting is a layering of that debate because of our own as feminists kind of taking on and inverting and also becoming deeply ambivalent anyway about whether we do or don't want to talk about motherhood and talk about kitchens anymore, and what it means to be part of something that is terming women's writing. It seems to me that what's driving the discussion is not the debates that were had in the 70s about whether domesticity and the husband were appropriate subjects for literature, but actually the post-Irigaray landscape that Anne was describing is kind of now sort of anxiety about what is it that we can say that isn't going to also reposition ourselves as essentialist or back in, you know, it's become very difficult to say quite simple things, I think, about certain kinds of experiences. And for me, it was crystallised around I was part of the discussion here with the text that supposedly was an idealised picture of motherhood, in which someone comes downstairs and has a cup of coffee and writes a few lines, and then her daughter comes in. And what I wanted to say was that occasionally nice things happen in our lives. Occasionally we have a nice cup of coffee. For 5 minutes we get to write something, and that our children might be part of the niceness of that moment. And there's something sort of almost become unspeakable about describing this as not idealised. Actually, that's kind of quite an ordinary experience that could be reclaimed not as a feminist experience or even as a female experience, but just as an experience. The point being just that sometimes children can be part of that experience, and that to me is what's become radical to say. Now that's a very odd place to end up at the end of that 40-year struggle, where but it's become sort of really worrying to make that point.
Yeah, and I started the discussion saying I work in my kitchen. Yes. I actually write in my kitchen. I have to study. I write in my kitchen. I love writing in my kitchen.
That fits in with what you were saying earlier about difference with others instead of. I can see a link there instead of always, rupture and opposition, but witness.
Yeah, but actually, there's also a shift. I was just at a conference about 3 weeks ago where there was this young feminist who's actually been involved in setting up UK Feminista. And what was really interesting about this presentation is that actually there are a number of younger feminists who are moving against the kind of work that has been done as part of third wave feminism and reclaiming the kind of work that was core for second wave feminism, because the kind of debates about the private have been sidelined, but they have not gone away. So actually reclaiming that kind of discussions about difference are re-emerging as part of the discourse and as part of the debate. So in a way we may well have gone full circle, but largely because, perhaps linking to what I was saying earlier in my papers, the legislation has provided us with a veneer of equality, an assumption that we have equal opportunities, but actually it has not shifted towards a substantive equality. And that's why the debates are re-emerging and kind of going back full circle. So yes, it is about the double burden, the double shift, etc. And it's about carving out spaces for women where to be able to do both mothering and paid work, proper work, so to speak. And how do you actually juggle it, and how do you actually fit the two in the same place?
Well, it's about solving the problem that mothering is a shared communal activity across the board. It's not about women finding a way to do both things. So that's the discipline that didn't go away. It's been solved.
Okay, well, I think we've reached our time, so if we could carry on with the discussion over coffee, then...
No, it's not coffee.